Good morning, my dear students. Today we are going to learn the chapter 4, that is called Cascading Style Sheets or CSS. Okay, so let's start. CSS or your Cascading Style Sheets is used to control the style of a web document in a simple and easy way. Okay, why it is used? It is used to control the style of a web document in a simple and easy way. It is a style sheet language used for describing the look and formatting of a document written in HTML. Getting? It is a style sheet language which is used for describing the look and formatting of a document written in HTML. HTML is the meaning of content, the style sheet is the presentation of that document. Okay, HTML is the meaning of or content, the style sheet is the presentation of that document. With CSS, we can add style, for example, font, color, spacing to the web document. Getting? We can make changes in that web document with the help of CSS. We can change the font, color, spacing and all. Getting? So CSS is the acronym for Cascading Style Sheet. You may be asking, what is acronym? Acronym is the abbreviation of the initial letter of the word. Okay, so CSS describe how HTML elements are to be displayed on screen, paper or in other media. Okay, the CSS will describe how the HTML elements are to be displayed on screen, paper or in other medias. Okay, CSS saves a lot of work. It can control the layout of multiple web pages all at once. Okay, it can control the layout of multiple web pages all at once. Okay, now let's see the advantages of CSS, how it is giving us some advantage. CSS handles the look and feel part of a web page. Okay, it handles the look and feel part of a web page. Using CSS, you can control the color of the text, the style of font, the spacing between paragraphs, background images or color used, layout design, variation in display for different devices, etc. Okay, you can see here that it can handle the look and feel, and using this CSS we can control the color, text, style or font, space between the paragraph, background images, color used and layout designs, variation in display in different devices, etc. Okay, now CSS save times. You can write CSS once and then reuse the same sheet in multiple HTML pages. It save time. How? Once you need to write the CSS and you can reuse in the same sheet in multi HTML pages. You can define a style for each HTML elements and apply it to as many as web pages as you want. Getting? Now page load faster. If you use CSS, you do not need to write HTML tag attributes every time. Getting? If you use the CSS, you do not need to write HTML tag attributes every time. Just write once CSS rule of a tag and apply it to all the occurrence of the tag. Getting? Only one time you need to write the CSS rule of a tag, then apply into all the occurring tags. So less code means faster downloading time. Next is easy maintenance. To make a global change, simple change the style, all the elements in all the web pages will be updated automatically. Okay, how? To make a global change, what you need to do, simply change the style and all the elements in the web page will be updated automatically. Getting? That is the advantage of CSS. Easy to maintain. Now CSS is easy to learn and understand. It is also easy to learn and understand. Now let's see the disadvantages of CSS. Okay, CSS is very limited in browser compatibility. It is very limited in the browser compatibility. This means that when you design a web page using CSS, it displays web pages very differently in different browser. Okay, it means when you are writing any web page using CSS, it displays web pages very differently in different browsers. Next is your CSS syntax. A CSS syntax means a CSS rule set consists of a selector and a declaration block. Okay, the CSS rule or set of consists of a selector and a declaration block. The selector point to the HTML elements you want to style. Okay, a declaration block contain one or more declarations separated by semicolons. Okay, now each declaration include a CSS property named and a value separated by a colon. A CSS declaration always ends with a semicolon, and declaration blocks are surrounded by curly braces. Okay, so a CSS compares of style rules that are interpreted by the browser and then applied to the corresponding elements in your document. A style rule is made of three parts. What are they? Your sector, property, and value. Getting? So these are the disadvantage of CSS. Now let's see what is your selector. There are different types of selector. Let's discuss the type, ID, and class selectors. Okay, first we will see the type selector. Type selector select elements based on the type name. Okay, how it works? It select the elements based on the type name. Getting? If you want the example of type selectors, then please go through your chapter page number 86. There you will get an example of your type selector. Now let's see the ID selector. You can define style ruled by ruled on the ID attributes of the elements. Okay, you can define style rules based on the ID attributes of the element. All the elements having that ID will be formatted according to the defined rule. Okay, it means all the elements that having the ID will be formatted according to the defined rule. The ID selector use the ID attributes of the HTML elements to select a specific element. Okay, the ID selector, what it is used? It is using the ID attribute of HTML elements to select a specific element. The ID of an element should be unique within a page. The ID of the element should be unique within a page. So the ID selector is used to select one unique element. To select an element with a specific ID, write a hashtag character followed by the ID of the element. Okay, how to find out the ID? Simply write a hashtag character followed by the ID of the element. The style rule are given some example. If you see in your book page number 87, if you want to go through the ID selector example, you just go through it. Okay, next is your class selector. Okay, class selector selected elements with a specific class attribute. Okay, how it is selecting? It is selecting elements with a specific class attribute. To select elements with a specific class, write a period character followed by the name of the class. Getting? How it works? To find out the element, what it will do? To select elements with a specific class, write a period, okay, character followed by the name of the class. Okay, example, if you want me, again you need to go to the page number 86. There you will get the example of your class selector. Getting? Now let's see the multiple style rules. Okay, multiple style rules. You may need to define multiple style rules for a single element. Okay, you may need to define multiple style rule for a single element. You can define these rules to combine multiply properties and corresponding value into a single block. You can define these rules to combine multiple properties and corresponding values into a single block. Example of your multi-style rules is already given in your book page number, just refer the page number 89. Okay, now let's see the grouping selector. You can also apply a style to many selector if you like. You can also apply a style to many selectors if you like. Just separate the selectors with a comma. Okay, just you need to separate the selectors with a comma. Okay, for example, h1 comma h2 comma h3 and etc. Getting? Now this defined style rule will be applicable to h1 h2 and h3 element as well. Okay, the order of the list is irrelevant. All the elements in the selector will have the corresponding declaration applied to them. This is all about your grouping selector. Now let's see the methods of applying CSS to an HTML document. What are the methods are there to apply the CSS to an HTML document? There are three ways you can apply CSS to an HTML document. First is inline, second is internal, third is your external. So let's see the first one, inline, the attribute style. One way to apply CSS to HTML is by using the inline style. Okay, you can put your CSS rules into a HTML document using the style elements. Okay, how you can use this CSS into HTML document? You need to write the CSS rule into the HTML document using the style element. Inline declaration are specified as a value of style attribute and are enclosed in document or double quotes. Okay, as you can see that in the line declaration are specified as a value of style attribute and are enclosed in double quotes. Okay, example is already given. Okay, if you want to know the example, just go through the book, there you will get it. Now let's see the internal or your embedded style sheet. Okay, if you want to use similar formatting for all the text of the same types on a web page, you should use internal or embedded style. Okay, if you want to use similar formatting for all the text of the same web page, what you need to do, you should use internal or embedded style. You use the style tag to contain all the instruction for the page. What we will do, we use the style tag to continue all the or contain all the instruction for the page. This style tag is placed within the head tag of a web page. Getting? This style tag is placed within the head tag of a web page. Here we use the style tag to contain all the instruction for the page. Here we are using the style tag to contain all the instruction for the page. The style element must have type. The style elements must have type your text slash css colon. Okay, it is an attribute for the browser to read style rules properly. Okay, it is an attribute for the browser to read style rules properly. Example of your internal or embedded style sheet is also given in your book, so please go through it. Okay, now next is your external style sheet. With an external style sheet, you can change the look of an entire website by changing just one file. Okay, with the help of your external style sheet, you can change the look of an entire website by changing just one file. Each page must include a reference to the external style sheet file inside the link element. Okay, each page must include a reference to the external style sheet file inside the link element. The link element goes into the head section. Then the external file will have the extension as .css and will be referenced from within the web page. Okay, how it is working? The link element goes into the head section, then the external file will have the extension as your .css and will be referenced from within the web page. CSS files are ordinary text file created using a text editor like your Notepad. Okay, to create a CSS file, open Notepad and type all the CSS rules you wish to define for your web page without the style tag or attributes. Okay, how you can write a CSS rules? With the help of your Notepad, whatever rules you want to define your page, you need to simply write there without your style tag. Next, save the file with a .css extension. Then after you link your HTML code to a style sheet by using a link tag, save your web page and reload it in your browser. Example is already given, so you just please go through it. Now let's see the CSS elements and properties. We will now learn about the various CSS elements and properties which can use to define formatting styles for a selector. First element is your color. The CSS color property lets you see the text color for different elements. Okay, the CSS color property lets you see the text color for different elements. How to use it? Use a background color combined with a text color to make the text more readable. Okay, you can use a background color combined with a text color to make the text more readable. Okay, how to do it? That rules symptoms are given there in your book. Just go through it once. Okay, now let's see the background color. How to change the background color? The background color property specify the background color of an element, and how to change the background color, that is also there in your book, so please go through it and do it the practical at home. Okay, now let's see the border property. The CSS border property allows you to specify the style, width, color of an element's border. Okay, this CSS border property allows you to specify the style, width and color of an element's border. Let's see the border style. The border style property specify what kind of border to display. Okay, the border style property can have 1 to 4 values for the top border, the right border, the bottom border and the left border. Getting? Now let's see the border width. The border width property specify the width of the 4 borders. The width can be set as a specific size in px or by using one of the 3 predefined values: thin, medium or thick. The border width property can specify 1 to 4 values for the top border, the right border, the bottom border and the left border. Now next is your border color. The border color property used to set the color of the 4 borders. The color can be set by name, specify a color name like red, or hex, specify a hex value like your FF0000, then your RGB, specify a RGB value like your RGB 255.00. Okay, this is the way you can set the border color. Okay, getting? If border color is not set, it inherits the color from the elements. If the example given below, you can see from your book. Okay, now let's see the border width. The border width property set the width of an element's 4 borders. This property can have 1 to 4 values. First is your thin, medium, thick and 10 px. Okay, the example is already given in a book, just please go through it. Okay, now let's see the next one, your padding. An element's padding is the space between its content and its border. This element padding is the space between its content and its border. We can change how much space there will be around each text or paragraph. We can change the how much space there will be around each text or border or paragraph. The padding property can be set as padding top, padding right, padding button and padding left. Okay, for the padding it is already given the example in our book, go through it. Now next is your CSS font. CCA font. First is your font family. The font family property specify the font for an element. There are 2 types of font family names. First is your family name, the name of font family like your Time, Courier, Arial, etc. Then second is your generic family, the name of generic family like your serif, sans serif, cursive, fantasy, monospace. These are the example of generic family. Okay, so start with the font you want and always end with a generic family. Okay, to let the browser pick a similar font in the generic family if no other fonts are available. Separate each value with a comma. Whenever you want to start a font, you need to start with what you want, which font you want, but always end with a generic family and let the browser pick a similar font in the generic family if no other fonts are available. Getting? Separate each values with a comma. Now let's see the font style. The font style property is mostly used to specify italic text. Okay, the property has 3 values. First is your normal, second is your italic, third is your oblique. Okay, so first we will see the Now we will see the font size. The font size property set the size of the text. Okay, this font size property set the size of the text. However, we should not use font size adjustment to make paragraphs look like headings or headings like a paragraph. Always use the proper HTML text like H1 or H6 for heading and P for paragraph. The font size values can be absolute size, relative size, or set with pixel. Okay, so what is absolute size? This set that text to a specific size does not allow user to change the text size in all browser. Okay, small, medium, or large. Relative size, this set the size relative to surrounding elements. Okay, allows a user to change the text size in browsers around 150%. Okay, now set with pixel. Setting the text size with pixels gives you full control over the text size. Okay, here setting the text size with pixel gives you full control over the text size. Example is already given in your book. Please go through it. Now we will see the text indent. To indent text before a paragraph begins, we can use the property text indent. Okay, to indent text before a paragraph begins, we can use the property text indent. The text indent property specifies the identification of the first line in a textbook or text block. It means the text indent property specifies the indentation of the first line in a text block. Okay, so the example for the indent text block is already given in your book. Go through it. Now let's see the CSS float property. The float property specifies how an element should float. Okay, the float property is used for positioning and formatting. This is used for positioning and formatting. The float property can have one of the following values. First is your left, second is right, third is your none, and fourth is your inherit. So first we will see the left. The left, okay, the element float to the left of its container. In right value, the element float to the right of its container. Now none value, the element does not float, will display just where it occurs in the text. This is default. Now next is your inherit value. The element inherits the float value of its present. Okay, so in its simplest use, the float property can be used to warp text around images. Okay, so for the CSS floating, the example is given in your book. Go through it. Now let's see the float property. Already I taught you. So here your chapter is over. Okay, so please go through the question answer and complete it, because soon you will have your exam. Getting? Till then, take care.